Welcome to the June monthly report for Squadron 42. This is originally sent out via email to anybody who had the Squadron 42 as part of their game package or as a standalone. And you can also see it, I believe, on the RSI website. There is links on the Reddit. It's pretty much everywhere. Um, this is going to be a little bit different. I wanted to go through each section a little bit and kind of do some digging. I've noticed that not a lot of content is focused on Squadron 42, the single player game that is obviously the parallelly being made game to the persistent universe we often refer to as Star Citizen. But the Squadron 42 game is its own standalone game. It uses the same engine, and it is intended to be an experience that leads you into the PU, in different ways. So I mentioned in today's video earlier today about citizenship in the PU's game would be earned through playing Squadron 42 and possibly even having access to exclusive ship purchases or having much easier access to ships that other people would have to earn reputation in other ways and have to earn their citizenship in other ways that you could simply just do in Squadron 42. It's worth mentioning that if you already have a game package, you can always get Squadron 42 as an add-on, and it's not usually a lot of money. I would recommend picking it up if you haven't already. It's one of those easy picks. It's probably cheaper than a Grey Cat at this point, the Grey Cat PTV vehicle. So let's kind of dig through this a little bit and go through the different sections, starting with the AI. So with AI, it should be a simpler process for CIG to work AI because it's a single player experience. When you have a single player experience, you don't have to focus on how are 100+ players going to interact with this AI and how we're going to render out all their different experiences at different times and have this massive economy that has all these different inputs going on. And how does AI respond to that? Whether they be pirates, whether they be traders, whether they be you know security forces. Instead, it's one player creating a change and in a set type of mission set, and then the AI has to react and basically just kind of behave in different ways. Now, we've heard in the past that you will be able to complete missions in different ways, but at the same time, there will be missions. You will be giving objectives. Uh, your squadron will be told we're heading out to go fight this, or we're going to save so and so, or at least attempt to find out what happened to them, and you will have to complete those missions. You can be creative about the ways you complete them, but you will be given a specific ship, and you will fly it out there, and you will complete the mission and deal with whatever the consequences are in the process. So when they talk about AI, keep that in mind that AI will be very strong and will be very responsive, um, and far more straightforward than in the PU, where you basically have a sandbox experience that the AI has to basically mold itself around and has all these different unknown factors, i.e., players running around changing things and milking the system or playing it in different ways, all at the same time. Uh, I find it's nice that they just to see that they're completing more AI changes, adding more immersiveness to the game through AI having all these different methodologies to do. They mention that AI will be able to search a spot, they'll be able to do even console hacking, they'll be able to look over an area or lean on a rail, for example, if they're looking for the player or their NPCs or something like that. It's nice little touches like this that make it feel like a lived-in world when you're on the ship in the downtime or in a mission in a dangerous situation. These type of things add a lot of little touches to really finish it up. I was just playing today with a friend, Final Fantasy Online, and I was saying to him that it was kind of interesting how when the player interacts with NPCs at the beginning of a mission or just after completing a big dungeon or something. The NPCs, like, they don't like shake your hand or hug or fist bump or anything more in depth. They simply stand back from each other like 3, 4 feet and they give the same set of reactions. There's a lot of reactions, but there's only a specific set. And that's always frustrated me in that game, especially when there's like very emotional scenes and then the player and the NPC are like 4 feet apart from each other. And it's just an interesting little factoid. It's very rare to see the characters kind of doing anything outside of a set number of interactions, standing still, not walking around and moving through those scenes. And they're cut scenes; they could change them. I think that CIG has even more that they're working on because basically everything is a cutscene. Has to meet a certain higher standard where these AI are going to be moving around, like almost the entire ship is basically going to be a set. I think of it more close to how Mass Effect felt when you walk around Normandy, and everybody's got a job to do. They may be working on different parts of the ship, or they're chatting with each other about different things. I think that the AI is going to have to meet those kind of expectations that when you come off an elevator at a different spot, that they all have to be different ways. So there's some places where I think there's not going to be too much depth when you're on a mission, and then there's other places where you have those downtime moments where you're going to have these things. So these animations are absolutely going to be critical, and how the AI utilizes them will make sense. They can't be staring at a wall, for example, when they're doing their stare spot, or if they're leaning on a rail, they can't be leaning into a rail over a reactor, taking a deadly amount of radiation or something without, PPE, personal protective equipment. So I think that they're going to have to go through a lot of different little checks and balances on the AI and make sure that they're using the correct animations, the correct styles at any given time, so they don't end up with the hilarious little cutscenes to be shared on Discord and on Reddit and such and Spectrum. But it's nice to see. So I think that with animations being completed, the design team's doing a few different interactions and systemic behaviors as part of a combat activity is nice for those transitions. And that goes right into what we were already talking about with animations. It's important that, right, like they just said right here, it's important that the player, when standing still, does not look like an inanimate mannequin. So zero G movement continued along with medical pen, wake up, medical beds, player jumping, and drunk locomotion set. Once again, things like drunk would be good in like a mission where you're betrayed, or even just in downtime. When you're hanging out a little too long at the the crew mess, and or you're on a station and you make the mistake of drinking a bit too much. Those are nice little touches. And I think that's nice that the animation team is clearly working right alongside with the AI talk here, with the design team's discussions and AI designers' work up here. So they're thinking about how the stations are going to look, how these NPCs are going to function, and multiple different environments within the Squadron 42 world. It's nice that they're working hand in hand like that. I think it's also important that they mentioned here that the Vanduul combat locomotion is being edited. Assets for combat and perception reactions for usables are currently being edited. So that means that they've already been developed. They are being changed up to see exactly how they want them to look. And if it's anything like when we do things in Unity, when you bring an animation into Unity, you develop it and then you edit it down to the exact little bits and pieces you want, and then take anything else you don't want out. And then basically you gotta, the word bake is the wrong word. I guess you'd use the word render maybe. But basically you set it in stone for what it's supposed to start to finish going to look like. And you may have a couple different versions of something based on different things. In our case, in VR chat worlds, you might have a couple different animations change up based on the size of a character. If you import an animation for a character that's like 6 feet tall, and then you put it on a very short character, the animation is may turn out not to look right, even though it has the same splines and bones and such. Inside of it, it's going to look, well, for lack of a better word, janky if the arms are extremely short. So I feel their pain, but also at the same time they're a whole professional team. I'm sure they've got the chops to be able to pull this together, and it is a fun experience to kind of seeing how things are going to look. I bring that up because I'm thinking the Vandul will probably be a taller creature than a human. I've seen in the videos, at least for the previews for Squadron 42, that they are indeed taller than the average person. It's not by that much, but it's noticeable enough. And also, the arm lengths and the leg lengths are going to be a different length. That all brings into that changes you're going to have to make. So you may have this wonderful animation of throwing somebody over their shoulder, but when you take that from the human player size or the NPC players, the NPC at UEE Navy Soldier 1 size, and you bring it over to the Vandul or any other species of creature that shares our whole combined area here, you're going to have to think about how those animations are going to look on their style, and between them, even like interactions, even like down to the fluidness of their ships. You will have different types of animations that make sense and don't, and the only way you're going to do that is if you do exactly what they're doing. They're editing, and I hope that they're going to play test those things where they just let everything do what it's supposed to do, and then see what the actual idle animations look like. What does the AI start kicking in, and do these all these different creatures that are the NPCs of the Vandul, for example, do they look right? Do they look right? Do they interact well? Do they look normal? Is it like 16 of them all standing, staring off the rail at the same time with the animate with this what you're working on up here that you've implemented over here? If you bring that over to the Vandul as well, and motion captures, of course, always something that's going to be ongoing. Some of the CIG stuff that they've shown is incredible with an immense amount of cameras and capturing capacity and the suits and everything. It's good to hear that they're still keeping that as an ongoing process, because if they were just working with a simple short set of animations with a few people of different heights, you would have problems very quickly. Facial team continued character improvements mentioned in previous reports. Animators, I think it's pretty good. I'll mention that on some of the projects that I'm working on, content creator wise, FOIP, face over IP, is actually working quite well. I'm interested to find out what type of facial capture they use. I don't know if it's more advanced FOIP, maybe like a localized version of it, or is it something more professional. I don't know what's better than just regular FOIP, but right now just even a webcam is pretty good at catching you. The biggest problem that me and some of the folks I work with on different projects are seeing is if you don't have good lighting and you're trying to use FOIP with, say, a webcam, a simple webcam, even 1080p, like a decent one, there's some desync issues where you'll often hear the same expression over and over again. We're asking each other, do you see the face? Do you see the face? Is the face tracking? And even if you're looking at it on your side, the tracking may not be on their side. So it's the networking issue. You will not have networking issues when you're developing a game like this in the same room, or with a Cat7 Ethernet cable or a fiber optic cable running back and forth between you and the server you're working off of and sharing. And also in the single player experience, if this is translating over to an actual player's facial expressions being brought into the game, if that's considered part of it, which I don't think it would be, but if it is, that will not be impacted by networking issues, as far as I can tell, because basically everything would be localized. So it's just something to think about. I'm trying to think of what the modularity system talking about for the Screaming Galsons and the initial loadout to test the system as a placeholder character for the designers when they begin working on the related gameplay. The thing is, I really wish they would have gave us a primer or just a simple picture to give us an idea of what the heck Screaming Galsons is. I apologize, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's kind of a frustrating thing to me that they just assume you know what the heck that is. I've read a few of these reports, but I haven't read one in a few months even. But judging by the wiki, the Screaming Gelsons is basically a pirate organization. They're outlaws, a small pirate organization run by Ariana Heller and Victor Heller's father. Are were members of the Screaming Gauses of the Tyrol system. So they're going to be taking place in Chapter 4 of Squadron 42. So Screaming Galsons is a pirate organization out in... Huh. So they're in the Odin system. So this is something that I've been talking about a little bit a few days ago now. But there was a in-game content they were making for pirates called Booty Call. It's spelled with like two zeros, I think. It's a very clever name though. But it's out of the Nix system, and I argued in that video that that seems to be a pattern that we're seeing, is that more and more content is being put towards Pyro and Nix. And in the case of Squadron 42, there's references to the Odin system, for their pirates. We're seeing more and more of this content that is outside of the Stanton system. Stanton being the system that the the persistent universe is currently based in. The PU is based in. And the whole pocket that's near Stanton includes places like Odin, includes Pyro, includes Nyx. And I feel like I can't help but notice that more and more content is being laid out in the area surrounding Stanton and not just focused in it. And that's actually a pretty obvious thing for Squadron, at least. Squadron is not based in Stanton for at least most of it, as far as I've seen. I haven't seen a single bit of it that's going to be in Stanton. And that's probably for the better, honestly. I'd love to see a lot more places, even if that's the way we're going to see them quickly. I hope that, Squadron's going to be pushed over the line soon. I'm going to bring up at the end what I predict Squadron's most recent release-ish dates will be. But I want to go back to this. So we're talking about that Art is completing the modularity system for the pirate organization, the Screaming Galsons, out of the Odin system, which is where most of Squadron is, if not all, for part 1 of Squadron 42, which has been cut into 3 pieces, if you don't already know that. Trejo's outfit and helmet are in the final stages of the modeling, and will be ready for skin soon. Once complete, they'll focus on Chapter 1, which includes major characters like Bishop, Wade, McLaren, and Mason. And Chapter 1 being the first release of Squadron 42 out of the 3 that we just spoke about. This is the part I was actually working towards right here. I knew in the art section they mentioned this. So the interior of the Bengal is approaching completion. This is a major point for anybody who's watching, anybody who's watching this will be very familiar with the PU, and that's the place we mostly work towards. But the fact that interior of the Bengal is being completed for Squadron 42 does not mean that the interior of a Bengal will be available for us to utilize and be marching around in the PU right away. But it is a nice thing to know that the minute the servers can support the larger ships, that's a possibility that there will be fully functioning Bengals with their complete interiors done. When we completed the flybys recently, there was not an interior in those Bengals that did the flyby during Fleet Week this year. It was very exciting to see it. It was very cool. It had its guns blazing when people shot at it, etc. And it was really neat to see it in action. It was neat to see that little I'll call it a vertical slice of the Javelin with its tour in places you could kind of push it, wiggle into that were past the tour. But with the Bengal, this is a ship that truly is like a sign of the scale of Star Citizen. It's the max. It's one of the biggest ships in the game, and I mean, it's the second biggest. You got Retribution for the UEE Navy, i.e. the human side of things. The Bengal's the second biggest, and outside of the Van Duel, I mean, there's really that we know of. There's nothing bigger than these ships. The Bengal, and the Retribution, which there's only a single Retribution in the world, and it'll probably be a plot point when it. I'm guessing that it would get destroyed, by the Van Duel, and that'll set off a massive war. Because right now you have a lot of NPCs that have been spoken about that they don't take the Van Duel threat seriously due to, oh, we got these big powerful ships that are protecting our main hubs, and yes, it's hard for us to get back and forth, but why do we really need to fund the Navy so much? The Van Duel are on the outer edges. The main hubs have not felt the pain of the Van Duel, and in the storyline of Squadron 42, I feel that maybe not in the chapter one, part one of the series, will you feel that pain seen at the local at the local level at the major hubs, but you will feel that there's this mounting pressure that the Van Duel are coming forward. You saw in the previews that were done some fantastic speeches that we are at war, and no, we will not lose not one more system, and all that exciting talk. The bigger ships, I feel, are going to be a big plot point. And if I was a writer and I only had a single super powered ship, it would be, at the very least, damage the ship would be a major plot point. But the Bengal would be the largest ship. The Bengal would be the largest ship should the Retribution be destroyed or damaged. They could easily write in something like, "Oh, the jump points were disabled by a crack team of infiltrators by the Van Duel, or they bribed the Banu with a bunch of valuable technologies in order to disable our jump routes or confuse our teams or something, so that whatever reason the Retribution either is disabled itself or damaged itself or destroyed, or it simply cannot be in the fight. So all of a sudden the Bengal is the biggest thing we have. So the sheer numbers of the UEE and the numbers of the civilian defense forces that support the UEE will be critical. And I believe the Bengal will be the actual flagship, unlike the Retribution, which would probably be somewhere else. It's an interesting thing to think about, that when you take a look at the scale of the Van Duel ships, they're usually pretty dang large. The Retribution was a one-off ship envisioned to be the King ship, which is their Van Duel flagship. Was designed to destroy it, and that's its main job, is to hang out in different places and try to protect it. It's one ship that can only be in one place at a time. But the Bengal, on the other hand, there is multiple of these. There's a small contingent of these that you could assign to different projects. So if you're trying to take back a system, for example, you could assign multiple of these ships to help with that process. And also defense. Carriers are well suited at ensuring freedom of a area, and also enforce the rules that you need to be enforced. They have the capability to have long-reaching influence through their fighters that they have on board and their bombers that they have on board. And they can also do humanitarian missions, because you can bring example in Star Citizen terms, you could bring in something like a dropship, or you could bring in something that's a transport vessel and be able to operate outside of it. The Bengal is massive. rumors mill, if it is to be believed, someone was actually almost able to fit an Idris inside of a Bengals, but basically the doors wouldn't allow it. When it came to just kind of mashing the models together to see what would happen. I was not involved in that, but I've heard it through the grapevine, and that was actually a pretty interesting rumor, to say the least. That's how large the Bengal is area is inside of the ship, and how what you can expect when you set foot in it is going to be a truly amazing place, almost like a cathedral to space-based technology and sci-fi and space games. That it's going to be pretty amazing. I look forward to it. And as you can see right here, it's really cool to see that the cinematics and gameplay story teams scene work and made the hangar feel more alive, lived in, and there's a process to launching ships. I'm going to resist the urge to start posting 50 videos here of Battlestar Galactica '04, but I will say that the chief would be pleased with this, and his team that the men and women that were manning Galactica's tubes will greatly appreciate that that they'll be looking good here. I think the Bengal is going to be a really amazing ship. I think it's going to be something that it will be your home for a long period of time. It won't be your first home, but when you do manage to get to the Bengal, it will be an exciting place to be. Now let's take a look at the Archon, because this is a completely different location. It has interior and exterior work. You can see that it's in multiple chapters of the game, so it's going to be a big plot point in the later part of the game. Archon Base is a pretty interesting style of space station. It has these huge mechanisms to hold it in place across multiple asteroids, and it mines them as well. It basically drags these asteroids in from the belt. It has these mining capacity on board, and it also has like these huge hooks, and some of the concepts, describe like these massive metal cables that extend outwards to hold it in place and kind of hold its place in the world. And then it has these arms pivot. The whole point of Archon Station is that it moves. It's very a fluid place and a very dangerous place. It's an interesting setup, to say the least. And I'm not going to say too much more. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much of it is actually official and what is fan discussion about this Archon station. But that was one of the pictures I could find, and some of the concept art is pretty cool. That's all I have on that. Development of standalone Greycat tractor beam and salvage tools continues, with the art teams beginning the animation pass and finished iteration on the rigs. If the what was it? I believe it was Star Citizen Live, but the EU team had a great discussion, kind of getting a lot of the gameplay that they were developing and working on. And one of the things that came up that was a big standout topic was that there is going to be standalone tools of virtually every kind that we already have. For the multi-tool, will have its own standalone tool, and there will be other standalone tools as well. So, for example, the med pen will be replaced by a medical gun, and the med pen will be the charges for that medical gun. The Grey Cat mining device will also have a standalone Grey Cat mining tool. And now you're seeing this right here, what we've already suspected, that the multi-tool tractor beam will also have a standalone tractor beam, and it's going to be made by Grey Cat. Also, there will be a standalone salvage tool. The funny thing is we don't even have the multi-tool salvage or tractor beams yet in the PU, but as these standalone Grey Cat tractor beams and salvage tools work continues, the art team will begin the animation passes and finish iteration on the rigs. And what they mean by that is, how is it gonna, not only is it gonna animate for the tool itself and how it loads, say, for example, the salvage thing, there may be salvage crystals or something, just like we have mining crystals. There may be some type of tool that you can add to it, or mods that you can add to it, or How's it going to look when it overheats? All of these things. The tractor beam, when it activates and deactivates, how does that look? All those different things are going to be in there. And how does that all come together? And then the other part where it's talking about iterating on the rigs. So how does it look when it's mounted to your shoulder and you're pointing this thing, this tool that you're aiming and you're utilizing in the tractor beam capacity or salvaging? It's interesting to see that they're going to be used in Squadron 42. I don't know if everything's going to be for the player. I mean, the tractor beam would be a good example. The salvage tool surprised me a little bit to see that players will be salvaging things. I'm not quite sure. But I could definitely see a few pirates using a salvage tool, and it's crystal clear that's what they're using it for. And, different NPCs that are at a mining location could be using those, for example, being seen as utilitarian tools that are utilized. Tractor beams in general are going to be used to offload cargo, by the way, on ships. So it's not just like a tool to like pull you places or some type of tool that's a specialist tool. It's actually going to be a very common tool. So at any space station, like that Archon station, for example, if there's NPCs there running it, it'll probably be likely you would see tractor beams being utilized by the NPCs on the docks, moving just goods back and forth. It's pretty common. So it is kind of cool to see that, though, that once again that parallel development has benefits. It is undeniable that we will see a Grey Cat tractor beam and salvage tools be brought over that are standalones into the persistent universe when they're ready. Just a interesting thing right there. And they are not going to be ready this moment, because literally our team's just beginning their animation pass and finishing iteration on the rigs. So there's a few more steps that have to go into this, and it has to go through quality control and it has to be tested. This is going to be multiple patches from now, but you will see these. Expect a Grey Cat tractor beam and a salvage tool in the PU. If that's what you're looking for, this video is like, hey, what can I glean from the PU? Things like the Bengal interior, things like that standalone tools. These are the kind of bread and butter for what we're looking for. If you're looking here for Squadron 42 content, that's also great. And it's cool to see that you'll have a fleshed out world to experience when the game's out. Audio team produced music alongside Geoff Zanelli for Chapter 4 of the campaign, and additional dialogues as required. It's nice to see more work being done on the missions and making it fully fleshed out. I know music can make or break a game. I think of FTL. I mean, could you imagine a game like FTL if the soundtrack wasn't just absolutely amazing? I don't know if anybody would play it, to be honest. It's amazing how a soundtrack can really set the tone for a good game and elevate it into an amazing game. It's something that I've played FTL constantly, coming back to it just because I love the tune so much. Sometimes I'll go on YouTube and literally play it while I'm working on something for work, or if I'm doing these type of things. After I'm done recording, I go edit and I'll watch TV shows or I'll listen to music, passively watch things while I'm working on these edits. And it's a lot of time involved, and those type of things calm you down and really get you going, or get you excited in some cases. It's kind of funny. You're like, what is this? Oh yeah, it's the fight sounds, from the Rockmen or something from FTL. And I think of those things, and I hope that Squadron 42 will give me fond memories and give more replay value as they continue to invest in the music. But the music has been fantastic in PU. I don't see why it wouldn't be in Squadron either. Would not be also in Squadron as well. Okay. One of the nicer things is cinematics. Talked about earlier, Final Fantasy Online, I was picking on it a little bit about how the cinematics are not too hot in that game. It's nice to see that they have this work they're being done. So from the ground up, they're thinking about how these scenes will play out, how the look and feel goes into the team. I'm seeing all the right keywords here. It's hard to picture without actual pictures and video. I think there is some pictures on the monthly report for the PU for Star Citizen. For some reason, I don't see the pictures, unfortunately. I wish there was. Kind of showing a few things. Even just, I wish CIG would watch these, because I'd love to be able to give some input. CIG, if I could say one thing to them, I would say, look, you can show us a bit behind the scenes of lumberyard and editing and stuff, and show us a little bit of what you're doing. Just, take some of the labels off and some of the information that you think is sensitive. Scrub it. Blur out the sides. Show us what you're working with and give us a picture of what these technical terms are. If you're talking about cinematics, are you talking about when a player flies for the first time into an asteroid, into the coil where all the asteroids are, and there's a kraken overlooking the area and it's hiding behind the rocks and whatever? Or are you talking about cinematics as in you're standing there communicating with a mission giver, or communicating, with the lead of the squadron? Like, give us a frame of reference. Are you talking about just how the player, in this case, at least they say a cutaway that introduces the player to the remote mining outpost? So this is Archon. Why not just say Archon? And if it's not Archon, make that clear. If you had a picture, we would be able to say, oh, it's not Archon. Hey, that doesn't look like Archon. And I mean, you don't have to show us everything. Once again, you could even have somebody just do a quickie, like put a vector art pass on everything so it looks a little blurred out and it doesn't have as much detail. And bam, there you go. You got it. Like, I'm not saying you even have to put extra effort into this. A couple little screenshots would go a long, long way. And you could make them give people a picture without giving everything away. It would be very nice. Let the team block out the scenes. Flying their Gladiuses towards an outpost on a remote asteroid of the Odin system. Once again, and one of the other frustrating things about Squadron 42 is, as I alluded to earlier, either most of it or all of it is, last we heard, is going to be in the Odin system. And we know nothing about the Odin system. Like, we know general stuff. I mean, we know it's a rocky place full of pirates. But what is the Odin system? I haven't spent hours and hours and hours playing at Odin. I spent hours and hours and hours playing in Stanton. It's a completely different experience. And more information would be good. I think that without, you don't have to give away every plot point, but at the same time, flesh out that world and then show us that world. I would love an hour-long sit-down like Jared's been doing with a few of the PU side, of people designing the Odin system, and just hour-long bits, like exploring a planet with them and showing some of their favorite spots. And you could even purposely pick places that are not part of Squadron. So there's no secrets, there's no riddles, there's no nothing, but it gives us a vision of the area you're talking about, and it gives us kind of an idea of how it's fleshed out. Kind of like a greatest hits of Odin, and you could do like an hour of content and then split it over, say, four videos, and that would give you plenty of time to kind of disseminate and think it through, and it wouldn't be that hard, honestly. Just some thoughts. I don't know. Why it frustrates me, though, because I see so much potential here. I see so much good content where I think the fear of giving something away is more important than giving the community the excitement and hype that it truly deserves, because Squadron is an exciting thing. Optimizes various types of assets, textures, meshes, sounds, and data. So they're basically just talking about how they're tailoring the information that's going through and being rendered, and how it's not tying up as much memory because there isn't so much of a draw on that. And yes, I know that's not the official technical terms. We're just going to keep it simple. But the gist that we have here is that a lot of this hopefully will be translated over. These fixes and this run through with this new technology will hopefully be brought over to the persistent universe as needed and as capable. We have seen a lot of this engine talk as well in the Star Citizen monthly report. That's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm literally reading, and I'm noticing the exact same words. I'm noticing deferred pipelines. I'm noticing 100 megabytes of memory and networking data. I'm noticing a lot of these things. Hang on, let me zoom this in a little bit. I've been promising folks reading mobile, if I bring up words, a lot of words, I will try to show them exactly what I'm talking about as readable as possible. So, sorry this color background is probably not the best for popping out the information, but this is what they got on their official page. And if you look at them side by side, they're word for word in some cases. I feel like the engine team kind of regurgitated a lot of this information. See, here's the 100 megabyte page volume and the Gen 12 talk. So I'm going to do something that Star Citizen, the CIG team that is handling the engine for both PU and even this runtime stuff, it's word for word on the Star Citizen monthly report because it's the same engine. But I'm going to do something that our buddies, even the Clang 11 stuff, everything here, this entire section was copy and pasted over. So I'm going to do something that they didn't do. I'm going to take this a step further and explain why Gen 12 is important. I'm not just going to throw a bunch of technical jargon at you. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad to see progress, if this is progress, whatever all this means. But the team continued working on transition to Gen 12. A Gen 12 exclusive mode for forward rendered deferred pipelines was added. Numerous rendering issues were fixed, and editor support was improved. Support for instance constant buffer with reflection data was added, and vertex input caching was extended. In terms of visual features, support for detail cavity and gloss blending was added too. The transition to Gen 12 is extraordinarily important for the persistent universe, and I'm assuming also for Squadron 42. This is basically what I made up for one of my previous videos, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen now. This right here is the discussion that I had about VR implementation. And one of the big surprises was Sylvan here, who is one of their engineers who's working on this stuff, particularly in the engine crew, explained that in order to get VR to function, what we wanted, we need Gen 12/Vulkan renderer in a great state. Then he's going to try to push for VR. Ignore the fact that it says full body VR. Please watch that video. I'll explain why it should be in a tiered methodology, and basically they'll have to do it in a tiered methodology. I'll put it in the final card for this video as well if you don't want to go searching through my previous videos. But it's a great video. You'll learn a little bit more about my community development in VR chat as well. If you're really bored, please feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in learning how to do stuff like that. It's good fun stuff. But this guy actually gets paid to do these type of things, and it's exciting to see somebody who is in the loop, so to speak, at a major developer and publisher who is this excited about VR. He's a diehard VR player just like the rest of us, and that's a pretty cool sight to see. If you're into VR, you know how it's a small community, and to run into somebody who has that capability and is honest and is transparent and is able to make a difference is pretty cool. So one of the big surprises I had, though, was that I did not realize how VR tie-ins was so critically tied to Vulkan and Gen 12. And that's exactly what he says here through multiple of his posts. And yes, I know they're not exactly from yesterday, but they were as recent as the beginning of June. I think this one was the middle of June, where they talk about, he's still talking about the Gen 12 renderer. And now in this specific day's post, I am looking at the Gen 12 discussion that was copy and pasted. I don't know if it's copy and pasted from Squadron or into the Persistent Universe's Star Citizen post, or if it was the other way around, but they were. But they are talking about bringing on board the new Gen 12 exclusive tools, creating a deferred pipeline for Gen 12 forward rendered
deferred pipelines. And what that's code for is anything we're making in the future, we're going to try to make it Gen 12 compliant and edit it directly in Gen 12. Translation, it will be tied to Vulkan. So that's what they've been working full steam on, at least since May. I'm certain before that, but at least in May, that's been the main focus of their development team for the engine team. And it was also something that would be eventually not just VR would benefit, but also we may see improvements in GPU over time. And this is an example of that. If you take a look at the different things, uh, this is starting to see the fruition of what he predicted, or heck, he just stated, because he's literally working on it since May 6th. Once that is done, we will, get the Vulkan shortly after the full Gen 12 renderer is working. Once that is done, we will push the parallelizing of the whole scene rendering even more and get rid of the render thread. When this is done rendering, we'll be utilizing all available cores as much as possible and no longer be bottlenecked by rendering. So, when we talk about the capabilities of CPU and GPU maximizing, it's tied to Gen 12. And this is something that we can glean from this. Sorry if you're my another future video, which I'm hoping to have a co-host, Awesome Ash, maybe coming back for that one, if we can get our schedules lined up. Um, if you're hearing this again from the Star Citizen side of house, from the Persistent Universe discussion of their monthly report, uh, I'm going to say the same thing I said then. Uh, Plain and simple, Gen 12 and Vulkan are absolutely critical for many, many mission areas right now. In my little dream area and the niche of VR is great because it's tied behind this, but also more importantly, everyone's performance and experience is tied behind this background, and the only surprise here is that it's not just Persistent Universe that's tied to this need for Gen 12, and everything needs to be put through Gen 12 and rendered into and set up to render into Vulkan. Uh, it is also Squadron 42 that is facing this hurdle, and that we're starting to see a lot of new tools. We're starting to see more support for these things, and we're starting to see like a lot of the things that they're working on are being more and more brought in line with what Gen 12 what was needed for Gen 12. And if you look at the words of one of the fellows who's been doing this, and what he posted in May all the way through till June, he talks about how getting the Vulkan backends getting done and getting the Gen 12 scene rendering and parallelizing the whole rendering scenes. So, and parallelizing means that you can use multiple cores of your CPU. So, there's a lot tied to it. This is good to see that they're getting this work done. So I know it seems like I'm kind of picking on them for copy and pasting the entire discussion over, but at the same time, it is it is important stuff, and it is worth mentioning that we're using the same engine both on the PU and in Squadron 42. I will also highlight this discussion piece right here, that so what they're talking about here for the driver issues, basically how I read this is the 1080s, the 1070s, the 1060s of the world, a line of video cards are being hit by issues rendering out scattering queries, and there's a workaround in place. And then they mention that they're going to attempt to find out if the driver has a bug, and if so, in that case, they hope they can be fixed properly, the bug. So they're hoping to literally address driver bugs for the line of older video cards that are still in service. A lot of folks are still using them, not just because of their budget, but just because they refuse to spend ridiculous amounts over the MSRP from newer cards. A lot of folks didn't go to the 2000 series. They were waiting for the 3K series. 3K series came out. There's not enough cards. So this is something to be thinking about with the game. They need to be thinking about what people actually have sitting in their machines, not just what people are hoping to have in their machines in the next coming 12 months. So this is just something else to think about with the 10 with graphics is sometimes you may not see the best possible experience because of the hardware you have in your computer, but at least they have workarounds to be able to allow you to experience different games as needed, and that's pretty cool. Especially because they're not releasing this game tomorrow. The Squadron 42 isn't coming out tomorrow, but they're still considering how this is going to be used, how this is going to feel on older graphics cards, and trying to make sure that everything works without being completely bugged out. And that's always a good step in the right direction when you can actually, your backers, no matter what their hardware, can actually play the game. That's pretty cool. We talked about this just a minute ago about optimizations and memory. This is the specific product that they're using. They mentioned that they also are using it when the same exact report is in the monthly report for Star Citizen, which is the PU side of things. So I'm just going to kind of skip over that. Aside from the usual bug fixing and quality of life support, we're talking about the UI functionality to the firing range to give more detailed feedback to the player. This is once again another immersive experience, especially if at some point in the game you're in that firing range and it's meant to enhance your experience as that character. You have to, beat a test, or you're in a competition with NPCs or something like that. You need to have a little bit more information, find out what you're missing, and develop your skills. And, that's kind of interesting. Rogue entities that have, for various reasons, had available positions, i.e. standing on chairs, probably, if I was to guess. Chris Roberts, in his interview that he did alongside Sandy, just recently, Sandy Gardner, spoke a little bit about this issue. It is near and dear to his heart when it comes to the PU, where if a player is away from NPCs because of resource needs, basically the NPCs go into like an idle and they disappear position, and as you get closer they load back in, and then the NPCs unfortunately don't know what to do, and they create these weird positions where they're standing on chairs or T-posing, or two of them are leaning on the same rail or whatever, until they catch up, until the processing catches up and they're able to do other things. And this is also talking about, not only is that a bad thing, but this is literally costing performance and memory. And by the way, I'm making the assumption that they're doing weird positions like that. I don't know if it's exactly standing on chairs, but in their case for Squadron, but it should change things a little bit. In this case, they're talking about adding a minder system that will constantly be scripted to checking what the NPCs are doing and attempt to remind the NPC to do their job, and to remind NPCs to actually, not be so weird. Like, get off those chairs. So that's pretty cool. I'm fine with that, which allows the developer to start the game at any point through the mini mission. They added in a trainer. If anybody remembers the early 2000s of gaming, there was programs that allowed you to, or applications that allowed you to jump into a game with unlimited money, or jump into a specific mission you didn't unlock yet. This sounds like an official trainer for this game that will allow the developers to jump around the game and be able to emanate a save game at checkpoints. And that should help them get, things that quality assurance finds, or things that they need to constantly check over and over again in different ways. They will be able to confirm and verify that it is working correctly easier, which is always cool. Yeah, this is talking about another mission they work with. Breakdown does deliver placeholder animations. This is another example of, they could not spoil it just by showing a picture, or a short video even, dare I say it, but a picture or two of the new mocap. You don't remember, you can't see anything. The people are wearing a suit that looks nothing like what they're going to be wearing in game. It would be kind of cool though, just to see kind of them with their props and some basic information without giving away the entire what the missions of Chapter 5 are going to be. It would be kind of cool. It's a shame. Once again, this is a missed opportunity right here. I know it's not completely easy to take pictures and remember to document all your stuff, but I'm sure there's pictures being taken. I'm sure there's video being taken. Just even a screen grab from the projects. Even by the nature of mocap, if it's anything I'm used to, there's going to be pictures. There's going to be electronics that will allow you to take pictures right there. Uh, I don't know what else to say about that, but yeah. Lines random to NPC conversations mentioned in previous reports. So they're polishing different things. They're changing out multiple mission areas, and they're trying to complete what they're working with. And fake interiors enabling. I'm fine with this. This is a very common tactic. Don't be afraid by that word. Don't be afraid by the word fake. This is a very common thing that has to be done in a lot of games in order to make places feel real and wide and lived in, but they have windows of static rooms without actually modeling the interior. So basically, you'll see a skyscraper, and if they modeled 50 floors of a skyscraper, your computer would be on its knees if anything else was there, like say ships warped in, or say you're running from the bad guys, or whatever you're doing on the ground. So if you don't need to be in that building, or if you walk up to it until you actually go to the floor that your elevator is working off of. So let's just play this out. You go to deliver a package on the floor 45 of a 50-story high-rise building. You're going to go into that building, and the bottom floor would be modeled, and then you'll jump into an elevator. And that elevator will take you to the 45th floor, which is modeled. But every other floor is fake. As in, the outside structure is basically, if you look through the windows, it would have something inside of it, but the actual interiors are not properly modeled in the sense that a player is expected to be able to walk around it and pick up items and see NPCs trotting around inside of it. None of that would be there. Like it talks about, like getting rid of the bespoke rooms and keeping it to these interiors that have minimal cost and are highly optimized, and they're basically the same thing over and over again in different ways. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a good idea. I'm kind of surprised that they're just starting to go through that process. I would assume it is possible that they don't have a lot of fake interiors yet because they weren't in places that required large interior spaces. So, for or performance in real life. Environmental props. So it's a kind of an interesting thing to see. Level of detail merger into tint palettes and wear. It's also completed to allow huge draw cost savings for distant renderings of the city. So here's another example. When you're talking about Orison, which is in Stanton, by the way. So there you go. There's our answer that they're going to make it in Stanton. You have the level of detail and wear that were also completed for huge draw call savings for distant rendering in the city. Wait, what? We got tricked again. So I do not believe. I can't be certain that Orison is actually anything to do with Squadron 42. It looks like they copy and pasted the graphics team update onto both of these locations. So both the Star Citizen monthly report for June 2021 and the Squadron 42 update both have this information. This is an example how you got to have a little bit of detective hat on when you look at these reports. Jesus. Okay. All right. I respect the game. I respect the player here. But so we're looking at possibly that most of this information is BS. That it will have nothing to do with Squadron 42. Cloud density from planets. That's all Orison. So yeah. This is once again good stuff though, right here. Graphics and VFX programming teams also make good progress on the Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan backends, with vast majorities of post effects now rendering in Gen 12 by default. So cool. Get burned here, but I will take this any day of the week gladly in exchange. Vast majority of post effects now running Gen 12 by default. And this is going to be the mantra, I think, for the next few monthly reports, that more and more things are Gen 12, and hopefully then the Vulkan backend as part of that Gen 12 renderer support. Major CPU performance savings as post-pro effects were already cheap on the CPU side. The major benefits will be seen rendering. So that last little bit, I think this is geared towards Squadron, the scene rendering discussion, but I can't be certain now because both of them have the same copy and paste over to each other. But anyway, long story made short, Gen 12 with the Vulkan backend tied together is important, and it will also allow for, as we've learned from Sylvan's posts, will allow for greatly increased parallelizing of CPU processing. So your CPU on your computer that has at least 4 cores in most modern PCs. Some of them nowadays can have 16, 32, even 64 actual cores, not even counting virtual cores. Can have 8 virtual cores on a 4-core machine in many cases, and it can sit there and say, okay, you giving me 6 threads out of those 8, I will use them. And all of a sudden now you will have a vast amount more CPU capability to start deciphering information and be able to present you more information faster. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how your computer's built, the CPU load for Star Citizen currently is very high. By being able to split that across multiple cores or virtual cores, you will gain a lot of benefits and performance, and you will learn to appreciate that every little bit counts. And I would say that the CPU bottleneck is a major discussion point, and I appreciate the valiant efforts of Sylvan and the rest of the teams that are handling the capabilities, whether it be the graphics and VFX teams, whether it be the engine rendering folks and the developers of all that. Thank you all for your hard work. Is what I would say to them if I could. A little less copy and pasting would be nice. At least have one of your teams sit down with the Word document and literally make 2 versions that literally take out things like Orison if it has nothing to do with Squadron. That's all I'd ask. But thank you for your hard work. The actual game. Space/dogfight team continued with their AI buddy spaceflight behaviors, mostly relate to Old Man. So that's pretty cool. So they also updated existing chapters with the additional functionality for radar ping and scanning that came out last quarter. Space-based stealth gameplay was built out too, meaning that the player needs to be aware of their own emissions and cross-section to avoid being spotted. That's something that we've seen from the PU. We've heard from multiple developers now, and also JC, one of the pillars about stealth-based concepts and about how pinging will work with your actual ship, talking about EM emissions, IR emissions, so your heat, your actual electronic emissions, how all these things will tie together and basically create a bigger and bigger blip on your ship. And you will need to think about those things. And also your visual cross-section will be critical, i.e. hiding behind something eventually will mean something. Right now, when someone scans, at least in the PU, you can hide behind a mountain or an asteroid all you want. It will not do a thing. Your emissions are all that matter. So you turn your engines off. It should help. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. But eventually, it will matter what the ship can optically see, or you can mark one eyeball visually, will matter. and also your IR and your EM emissions. So the heat your engine gives off and your thrusters give off and your coolers emanate into space. And then also your actual emissions, like your communications with other ships, your scanning itself. If you issue a ping, everyone's going to know about it. And in the words of the devs, if you ping and you actually ping something, they will know you ping them, and they will obviously take evasive action or become more aggressive or whatever the case may be. The AI is going to be no different. In the case of Old Man, he's going to be like your lead, kind of teaching you the ropes a bit, as I understand it. So there will be a lot of interplay with different game mechanics, probably trying to teach you how to do radar, how to ping, how to scan, but I'm just speculating there. Guess we'll see. The stealth-based gameplay is a pretty cool concept, and level design team increased FPS space polish as possible. Technical challenges to overcome. Social design team and FPS crossover scenes. And switching to combat anytime. I like that. It's pretty cool. FP encompasses all FPS crossover scenes that can switch into combat at any time. So I'd like to think that the game's not going to be on rails. So at any moment you could feel like you're going to end up in a gunfight. Is a pretty cool experience. Remember, you're working for the Navy. You're a combat person. You're fighting, and you will have different experiences like that outside of that cockpit. And this will help, I think, a lot keep people on their toes and keep things exciting. And I would hope that at any time you could, one of your negotiation tactics, to quote Fifth Element, we're sending in a negotiator, and Bruce Willis goes in with a gun and he starts shooting. And the president is like, I wonder where he learned that. I feel like that should be an option if you want to go and take that massive risk and, you know, get that reputation to be hot-blooded. I think that should be an option for players. I think it should have consequences, but I think that would be really cool to see things like that. That would be a great way to kind of make it not feel so linear and make it feel like it's a bit different ways to finish the mission, and sculpt the game a bit in your own experiences, the way you feel like you'd do it. Like, oh, I wouldn't tolerate this, I'd do that. Or, hey, I would not want to become aggressive, and I'd want to try to negotiate that out. You know, there's a lot of bad guys in there, or there's, you know, somebody friendly could get hurt. You know, like, these are all things I think about. Design to see what was working and what wasn't for the narrative team. This is always a tough topic. Capturing final dialogue with actors and mocap. They're trying to get ready for that. And the mocap in July. Narrative team supporting all those functional changes. The cinematics again lied. One other thing, whether the character is expected to have a bespoke face or whether they can be modeled using the DNA system. I think this is I don't think we should read too much into this. I'm curious if they're trying to suggest that the character will have a set face that they have to make, or whether they can use the DNA system to make the character. If it's the DNA system, you could be able to mold this face whichever way you want. Whereas a bespoke face, you may have to take whatever face is handed to you, or, you know, click between a couple preset faces. So but I wouldn't read too much into this. It could be as simple as we want to make the character look a certain way, and the DNA system's just an extra option, you know, to make that. There may be just a couple presets. For starters, I would want them all the same height, but in the same arms, legs, like we talked about earlier. Things like that would be critical. But other than that, I mean, I don't see that it'd be too much of an issue changing the complete characters, you know, every physical attribute you'd want to try to model it, you know, after the player will want to feel and look like. I don't know how difficult or hard that would be. I'm not going to read into this. That's a difficult decision for the team to make, that to try to figure out how to make that experience for the player feel more immersive and make them feel like they're more invested and make them feel like more it's them playing, not this random character. It'll be an interesting way to see where they end up on this. Cinematics again relied on QA for recordings of each level for review and support of the dev teams concluded. The QA testing changes and updates to the project. So cool. QA is an important part of the game. I like hearing the professional QA teams modeling and they also tested the Van Duel behavior implementations of the AI team and performed an open bug sweep to ensure QA databases were up to date. I've heard from a few folks that have worked in the QA world that they really, really are crazy folks where they really enjoy destroying games and tearing them up and really grinding them down to the absolute, minimums that they could possibly find to really scrutinize and exploit, and that's a good thing. So we walk away with a better game after their hard work. So I just want to take a moment, even though they have a short message here, and it seems like everything's swimmingly. It's because of their hard work that it is swimmingly. The devs rely heavily on QA, and I thank them for their hard work. Tech animation. Make great progress in their pipelines. R&D facial scans is good to go. Deliver many of the content. R&D into facial scans and scan creation pipelines was completed. Significant man hours over the coming years. I wouldn't read too much into this wording, the coming years part. I've already seen somebody post something talking about this, like, oh my god, the game's not going to be out for many years or something. There's going to be 3 games. So they could easily mean that they're talking about facial scans and scan creation pipelines and creating these tools because there's going to be 3 games. It's an entire trilogy. So they could be almost done the first game, and literally it'll still help with that a little bit, not as much as these other ones, but the next 2, they've learned from the first game that we need these tools, and they finally got around to making them. I wouldn't worry too much or read too much into this right here. Just a thought. Main part of facelifts, tech animations. Throughout June, the UI programmers worked on a system to allow all designers to connect their tools flow graph to the main UI tools. Also continued. So the tech for the star map is important for the PU. We've had endless problems trying to get the star map to function over the years, and I hope that any work they complete with Squadron 42 goes without saying that it hopefully will pile over into the PU and improve what we have over there. Investigating the final version of the Mebiglass UI will look and move. Once again, if it works in here, it should work in the PU and improve it. And that's what they've mantra has been since the beginning. There's actually more developers working on Squadron 42 than there are on PU. But the argument that's always made is, well, don't forget, the content made for Squadron 42 translates over to the PU extensively. Like a majority of the content they make ends up over in the PU in one way or another. Or at least the lessons they learn, the improvements they make, the tools they have all end up being double used. It's worth mentioning that's at least what their positions are. Environmental branding to create a backstory and ambiance for one of the locations. I like that they hid which location. This is an example of like pictures would say 1,000 words. If you don't want to talk about the exact position, give us a hint. Show us the style of the art. You don't have to show the exact location. But one of the concepts you didn't use. This is something where this is a wall of text, it feels like. And even digging and doing research and talking about it makes it interesting, but it only makes it so interesting. Pictures would help greatly, or a little sizzle reel showing a few pictures or video, little clips of video would be greatly appreciated. VXX artists continued updating the Squadron 42's locations to make use of the new lighting models. This month focused on the flagship location being worked on. Here's another thing. On a flagship location being worked on by Art and Design for an internal milestone. What internal milestone? What flagship location? I get that you don't want to spoil it, but is it even a ship? Is it even a location that's a station? Is it something that is that important that you can't do anything to mention anything more than that? Just why did you even bother writing it? Also continued on internal space of a key location that makes great use of gas cloud tech. on a key location. So it's probably up in the coil somewhere. But what? We don't know. How? We don't know. I don't know. Maybe if I was to guess off the top of my head, the Vanilla Kraken, maybe that's being used by the pirates. And then we have this right here. So, um, a lot to take in, a lot to think about with Squadron 42. There's not as much content as I would like about Squadron 42, so I took this as a risk. I went through it and I said, you know what? I'm going to cover it. I'm going to cover it this monthly report. And this is usually the part where I'll sit there and say, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of this. And more privately, talk to me on Discord or whichever you prefer. But I would like to take this a step further and just say that I do not feel that Squadron 42 has anything to fear from Starfield. This is the elephant in the room with any of these topics. So Starfield, for those who are not aware, is a game that's coming out, and it is a game that is going to be built by Bethesda, and it is a RPG that is still in the works. It is a long way from being completed. They have finally announced a date. It is going to be November 11th, 2022. This is Starfield's page for those who are interested. And to be honest, I have cautious optimism about Starfield. Starfield is something that I believe will be worth checking out. I would not pre-order it. I would not get a collector's edition, but I am interested in it, and I'll probably pick it up as soon as I hear it isn't whatever it is. Even if it's a mediocre game, I will pick it up because I love these type of games. I love Bethesda games. I love Fallout. I love Skyrim. And I appreciate that they have these different things, and especially if it has VR integrated from the beginning. I am not going to buy the game twice, but I would love to see them integrate VR into it, and that would make me even more excited. I doubt they will, though. The other games that they've done, they've had these interesting integrations into Fallout 4 and into Skyrim, and they made it into the VR version, which they sold as a separate game for full price, and it goes on sale often, but still pretty high. And I've, of course, bought them. I'm a huge VR fan. But at the very least, if I picked up Starfield, it would be years before I picked it up on VR, and at a severely discounted rate. But it should come in from the beginning with it, and that would be one more way to convince me to take the plunge, only because of my niche that I'm interested in. Now, Starfield, one of the biggest things about it that I believe is like the discussion of ancient technologies, and a lot of the focus is the world building that is Bethesda is king of. I think that there's a lot of things that they talk about, and it's all hype. There's a lot of hype involved with any type of new game, and Todd Howard knows how to sell a game. I've seen him stand on the stage for Fallout 76. I've seen him stand on the stage for Fallout 4. I've seen him stand on the stage for so many games now that never made it to what their level was. But don't get upset. Don't get upset. I mean that in the kindest way possible. It's his job. It's his job to build the hype. It's his job to build the excitement. I've talked in other games, like Star Citizen, for example, about how it is not the developer's job to sell you a completed game and complete the experience for you. It's their job to give you the sandcastle and the tools to make a sandcastle even better, or make your own. It's your choice. And then also the tools to break everybody else's sandcastles. In the case of a single-player game, it's much more straightforward. You have an experience that they expect you to have. They're going to give you multiple venues to take that experience. If it's an open world one, it's a little more dynamic, but you still don't have, you and your closest pals of, thousands of other players to think about. You just have you, and you get to carve the world you want. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a mission set that you're going to have to complete. They talk about how the game is going to be first or third person, but if you've played Fallout games or Skyrim, you know that the first and third person have different experiences. One's better than the other in most cases. Todd Howard mentioned that it was going to be Wild West like. Um, they're talking about it's extremely sketchy and early. He said on the one interview he spoke with somebody from SpaceX and brought them on, or an ex SpaceX engineer, something like that, to confirm everything was good. And they took a look at it and said, yeah, that's what it's going to be like in future, but not too far into the future. If you really insist on doing a direct comparison, by the way, Squadron 42 is set so far further into the future that it's not even it's hundreds of years into the future. It's not even worth discussing these things, because Starfield's kind of meant like what it would it be like slightly in the future if we had space exploration compared to what's in the future in Squadron, where we have shields on ships and all sorts of other exciting things that you couldn't even fathom in a game like Starfield. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how they're going to use their newer engine on this property. I am curious to see if they were saying the truth about how many years they've been working on this for how many years. Yeah, 25 or 15 or something. They were throwing crazy numbers around. I am curious to see how, what the heck they were working on. I think they mean that they've been working on games like this to flesh out and improve their chops at being able to make a decent RPG game. This is going to be like their first major space-based release. I have had folks we've talked with we've been joking about some of the Fallout expansions and the Wacky Wastelands stuff that we've seen, Bethesda publish, at least, and Bethesda's own hand. We've seen UFO stuff in their content, or at least discussions of it in the Fallout universe. It's kind of fun stuff. They don't have exactly chops at physically making a space-based game and releasing it. Whereas Squadron, you can literally boot up the PU now, and you can jump in some of the ships that will be in Squadron, get yourself in a Gladius, and check it out, and you will be pretty impressed, I suspect, because it's a real thing. It's a functioning ship. There's missions to go run. You can go play with your friends, by the way. And Squadron is something that I think is going to be a little different. It's because it is kind of in that focal point of the single player experience and that focus. But I think that the world that we're building as a space sim is not really in the same bracket. Even Squadron 42 is kind of in its own little world compared to Starfield. I do not see these as direct competitors in any way, shape, or form, unless we see tremendous differences in later releases. The teaser trailers for Starfield are abysmal when it comes to actually getting any information out of them. And the only real thing that excites me is that it's only available on Xbox and PC. And no, that doesn't mean I'm picking on PlayStation. It means more that it will have those higher processing needs that you will see on PC and the modern Xbox that might as well be a lockdown PC. So that's pretty interesting to me. It also means that you won't be dealing with a console port type situation for the most part. Even a chance of it, I should say. I'm not even accusing it will. I also like the fact that they're suggesting that they'll be using helium for fuel in the spaceships. That's a very futuristic and pretty cool thing. It's so my statement is cautious optimism. The little tiny bit of information we do have that we can confirm, or they've said themselves, that's scattered across 12 interviews across the internet and 2 teaser trailers and a little presentation later, we at least have some information to look at what these explorations are. We'll see. What is making people explore the universe is just as important as what the game is entailing. And if it has good character development and it's fun and it's interesting and exciting and it's as deep as a game like Fallout, I'll certainly play it. I will say that even with a decent replayable game, I turn back to online games with friends way more often than I turn back to single, even excellent, the best of the best single player games eventually lose their luster, or I'll come back and sit down and play them for a week, and then I'll be back on with online games. Squadron has that backbone as well of being attached to the PU, for better or worse. That parallel development of literally some of the developments being copy and pasted between the reports because they're that intertwined is worth mentioning here. That when you're done with Squadron, you will not have pangs of, oh, there's no more content. You'll have pangs of wanting to boot up the persistent universe and get playing with your friends again and showing off your new chops, or maybe showing off that new ship you can buy with UEC or something, hopefully. The F8C or something like that. That was one of the discussion points, is that if you complete Squadron, you should be able to get some type of recognition, such as citizenship and hopefully, unit patches and things like that in the PU to show off. And also, hopefully, be able to buy yourself an F8C, at least the civilian model of the F8, because you've been flying it in Squadron as one of the ships in there. So we'll see how far that goes, but there will be tie-ins between the two games, and that's a good thing. And you know what? Because Squadron's 3 games, it's actually pretty amazing to me that you will be able to go into Squadron, complete the experience, go back into the PU with your friends, and then when Squadron's second part comes out, bam, you're back in. And you get that experience once again that you can share with your friends. You can keep going back and forth on, and you have that single player tie-in with a persistent universe. And I mean, you could in theory just play the single player game. I'm sure many will, but I wouldn't recommend experiencing it that way. But that's your call. That's the whole point. That's kind of all the thoughts I had on that. So if you're ever wondering, like, if you're looking at these videos and you're looking at Starfield videos or Squadron videos, the few that are out there, because there's so little content to discuss, especially about Starfield. There's like a couple fact points, bullet points in an article, or a couple quotes from Todd Howard, and not a lot of other folks from Bethesda. It seems like they're not really allowing anybody else to kind of go out and talk about this just yet. Hopefully when it gets closer, we will. Yeah, the little bit we can glean, I can confidently say there's room at the end for both of these games. And if you're a big space fan, you're a big science fiction fan, I have cautious optimism, and I'd recommend taking a look at Starfield and keeping an eye on it and buying it, 5 minutes after the reviews come out, and you can see if it's a solid game and if it goes up to the standard that you come to expect from a big AAA developer like that. And as for Star Citizen and Squadron 42, I highly recommend, if you haven't already picked up a game pack that includes Squadron 42 or have that as an add-on, I'd highly recommend picking it up. Show your support. Show your interest in it. It's not expensive, especially when you're thinking about what a game package is nowadays. It's worth having both your access to the PU and Squadron 42 secured, and you get some really cool things like newsletters that tell you everything about these different games on both sides of the coin. And you can do some fun kind of reassurances that knowing what's going on, and get to see a little portal into the view of what the developers are seeing day to day and what they're working on. And that's about it. As I promised at the beginning, or near the beginning of this video, I wanted to mention that Chris Roberts himself said he's going to pack up his family and move to England, to the offices over in the UK, and he is going to oversee personally the final parts of rolling out Squadron 42, finishing the development of it and getting it out the door. That, you heard me correctly. I didn't stutter. He's going to do that very soon, within the next coming months. And he's talking about, like, the end of the year. He's talking about already going to be over there. If I read that, if I saw his interview correctly, and that shows to me the confidence he has in getting this through the post, and getting at least the initial part one of Squadron 42 rolled out very, very soon. So if I was to estimate when Squadron was going to actually get out the door, I would, at the latest, I would say probably November of the coming year. You know, because that's when Christmas is. But I would hope that it's sooner than that. I would really hope it is. I know they've been overcoming a lot with the working from home and all the other things that won't be named and that we've all experienced. And the developers of these games, not being able to work next to each other are, just as susceptible as any of us are. But it's time to get back to it. Get back to the ring of things and really see where our chips lie. It is something to talk about, but I am an optimist. Anybody who knows me would probably agree with that assessment. So if I was to guess, I would say that Squadron's going to come out a little sooner than Christmas of November 2022. Leading the Christmas season would be November 2022. You want to get your game and packaged and out their door before Black Friday of November. But if I was to predict a date, I would probably say around May of 2022 would be a great release date, because that would give you the entire summer of gameplay and get people really hyped about it and get people moving into Squadron. And then that would kind of lead nicely into Persistent Universe rollouts and the annual sale and CitizenCon and everything else for the PU as people complete the game, hopefully keep that wave of energy going into the rest of that year of 2022 and make it a strong ending for that year. I know that's optimistic, but that's kind of what I'm known for. Take it what you will. So that's my honest assessment based on what I'm seeing, what we're hearing, based on rumors, based on literal words from Chris Roberts himself about, pushing for this by the end of the year, moving to England to finish it up. Instead of the UK, just to finish it up. And it is exciting times ahead. I wish it was sooner. I wish it was faster. I wish I was having this conversation a year ago. But, times have changed, and that's how things are done. And now let's look forward to the future ahead, and hopefully a lot of new content for both Squadron 42 and for the Persistent Universe. This has been Red J with another deep dive into the Squadron 42 June discussion. Please provide feedback on this one, either on YouTube or directly into Reddit or into Discord if you want to talk privately, because it's always appreciated and it helps me with these videos.